The best way of conceptualizing reality at the highest level of abstraction. What is reality? There's this old Daoist symbol, the Yin and Yang symbol, eh? So there's a black serpent, and it has a white dot in it, and there's a white serpent, and it has a black dot in it, and they're tail to tail. And that whole symbol is Dao. And Dao means a bunch of things. It means potential. It means the way of life. So to live in Dao is to live in the proper manner. And you kind of live on the border between the black serpent and the white serpent. And then you say, well, what are those two things? Well, they're the two ultimate categories of reality, yin and yang. Well, how would you translate that into English? Well, masculine, feminine, that's one translation. But a better one, I would say, is order and chaos. You say, well, what's order and what's chaos? Well, order is when you're where what you're doing is producing what you want to have happen. Okay, so why is that orderly? It's because you can predict it. You do A, and you want B to happen, and B happens. So what does that mean? It means you know where you are, you know what you're doing, and things are working. And then you're calm, because there's nothing to be nervous about, and you're moderately happy, because you're getting what you need and want. And there's evidence that you are competent, because that's why things are working. That's order. Now, everyone knows that order can be shattered into disorder at the drop of a hat. You can be walking down the street and you're all happy and you're with your partner and, you know, she makes a mistake and steps off the curb and a bus hits her. It's like in 1 second you are not anymore in order. Like the bottom has fallen out of your life, and that's why there's a black dot in the white serpent. It's like, orderly as it is, look the hell out, because your life can be flipped upside down in a moment.
Right.
Okay. Well, then sometimes you're in a dire state and everything looks absolutely hopeless, and you get a new realization and bang, you know, everything snaps together. And so that's when you're in chaos and order can reveal itself. Okay, so order and chaos. You can think about it as the ice that you skate on with the water below. That's another way of thinking about it. Now you say, well, is that real? Is it really that the world is made out of order and chaos? Well, here's something weird. You have two hemispheres, right? And hypothetically, they were selected by the processes of natural evolution, right? They were selected by reality. Well, you have a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere. So it's kind of like, well, reality must have two elements, because why would you need two hemispheres otherwise? And they do have relatively separate consciousnesses, those two hemispheres. Think, well, okay, we've been selected to have this bifurcated view of reality. Well, what are they specialized for? Turns out the left hemisphere is specialized for those places where your routines work. That's the left hemisphere. And the right hemisphere is specialized for all those places you go when you don't know what you're doing. So the left hemisphere is specialized for order, and the right hemisphere is specialized for chaos. And so then you might think, well, does that mean that the world being is really made out of order and chaos? It's like, well, if you use the Darwinian logic, that's what it means. Okay, so what does meaning signify? Well, here's what it is, as far as I can tell. So imagine that you're watching a gymnast, and two gymnasts. We'll start with the first one. And the gymnast pops out on the floor and does her routine, and she's like, she's on it, man. Like, you can tell this girl has put her 50,000 hours in, and every single thing, impossible thing she does in succession is flawless, right? And at the end, she, you know, what would you say?
Voila.
Displays herself
Right.
to the crowd, right? And the crowd is like, wow, that's so impressive, because they think, wow, she's human, and look what humans can do, and isn't that so cool? And they're so thrilled, and, you know, the judges go 9.8, 9.8, 9.8. It's like, because I think it's 10 points for gymnasts, and it's like, well, now what does the next gymnast do? Because how do you top perfection, right? Because you can't. But that's not true. You can. So the next gymnast comes out, and she goes through her routine too, and it's perfect, but it's more than perfect, because you can see that with every bloody move she makes, she's pushing herself right to the ragged edge of disaster. Like she's risking the performance of her life, and that means she's risking a big mistake, because you risk that when you do the performance of your life, and you can just see her straining. It's like when you hear a great violinist or a great guitarist play something and they bend and twist all the notes so they're kind of rough and ragged, and they know how to do it perfectly, and they put this vicious edge on it. It's like you just love that. And so the gymnast is out there just stretching herself right to the limit of her ability, right? And then she does voila, right? And she's sweating, and it's like triumph, and the whole damn crowd just leaps to their feet because she was better than perfect. She was perfect in the way that will make her more perfect in the future. And that's meaningful. And that's why the crowd leaps to its feet. And she's on that border between chaos and order. And that's meaningful. And so what I would say is what your brain does for you is tell you when you're in the right place at the right time by infusing your life with significance and engagement. And it's saying, look, you've got the cosmos is lined up around you. It really, truly is. You're right in the right place at the right time. You're in your domain of competence, but you're stretching yourself so that you're actually improving at the same time. And that's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And so I think for a long time we've cast doubt on the reality of meaning. That's part of the death of God. There's no real meaning in life. It's like, no. It does not look like that's true. It looks like it might be the case that there's nothing more real in life than the sense of meaning. I actually think you can make, well, I do make that case in 12 Rules for Life. I think you can make a completely coherent case that meaning is an unerring guide. There's limits. If you're going to allow your sense of meaning to guide you, you don't want to lie to yourself because you pathologize the instinct. You know, because if you keep filling your head up with nonsense, the meaning generator is going to become corrupted, and it's going to make things shine for you that shouldn't shine. They'd only shine for someone who's corrupt. So if you're going to be guided by your sense of meaning, then don't fill your spirit with garbage. And that sort of applies to the first few rules. Don't lie. Don't do things that you hate. So the self is everything you are and everything you could be across time. Okay, but here you are caught in this little fragment of time. But there's this you that has the potential across time. Well, and it's something that you're trying to grow towards to maximize your potential, right? So then you might ask, well, how does that potential manifest itself in the present so that it can be revealed? Well, the answer is through the instinct of meaning. So that was Jung's answer. I thought, wow, that's just mind-boggling, that idea. It's like, okay, you could be more than you are, obviously. That's obviously the case. How does that manifest itself in the moment? Well, that which you could be tells you where to walk by making that path meaningful. Wow, it's like, really? Could that be the case? What else would make what you're doing meaningful? It's like, come up with a different explanation if you want. See if you can come up with a better explanation, because I don't think you can. Why do we grow in a conversation that's genuine? Well, it's because we're sharing information, right? And then we build each other out of the information. We build ourselves out of the information. So that's just a cognitive approach. But here's something else that we've learned recently. It's like, let's say you go pick up a new, like a physical hobby. Like you start weightlifting, or maybe you do jiu-jitsu or something like that. And so you're in a new environment and you're faced with new challenges. Genes in your brain turn on that weren't on before. And they code new proteins and they build new structures. And so inside the genetic structures that underlie your physiology are all sorts of physiological potentials that won't manifest themselves unless you put yourself in a new situation. And so by challenging yourself constantly, you're turning on parts of yourself that wouldn't otherwise be on. You could say, well, life is horrible and tragic and bitter and cruel, and everyone is suffering from being persecuted and from evil. It's like, yeah, okay, it's fine. So how are you going to deal with that? Turn yourself on. You know, you go everywhere and click everything on, and then maybe maybe you could handle it. So I'll tell you a wonderful story. So in the Chartres Cathedral is a cross. Okay, so the cross, the center of the cross is the center of consciousness. It's the point of maximal suffering. Okay, the cathedral's a cross. Now on the floor of the cathedral is a maze, a big maze, and you can walk it. So you go into the maze at the bottom quadrant, and then you walk all the way through the bottom right-hand quadrant, completely walk through it, and then you get to the top right-hand quadrant, and you walk all the way through that. Then you get to the top left one, and you walk all the way through that, and the bottom left one, and then you come to the center. It's a symbolic pilgrimage. So what it means, and it's a map of the world, north, south, east, and west. So it's symbolically the world. So the idea is that you have to walk through the entire world in order to get to the center. So you have to go everywhere and do everything to turn yourself on enough so that you can handle what's coming towards you. And you do that voluntarily. You open yourself up to the challenge. It's like, wow, I read all that. I thought, wow, that's such an amazing idea. You know it's true because, you know, all you do if you shrink from life,
Right.
the more you shrink, the smaller you get, unsurprisingly, right?
Sure, yeah.
And the more you move forward confidently and willing to take on the challenge and the potential danger, then the stronger you get. And then you might say, well, what's the upper limit to that strength? Well, you're really good for you. That would be good. You're really good for you and your family at the same time. It's like, oh, bargain. You're really good for your family and your community at the same time. And then you're really good for all of those in a way that gets better and better across time. It's like, well, that would be the ultimate expression of human possibility. It's like, well, that's a hell of an antidote to chaos.